welcome to episode 23, the penultimate episode of series 2 of the Actors Toolkit podcast here at the Adair Academy. Today we have another lovely two guests for you, two this time from the company Liquid Violet. We've got Natalie Baran and Hannah Winskill. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all. It's a bank holiday weekend coming up, so looking forward to that one.
I know an extra day off in the week makes so much difference, doesn't it?
I
Uh,
know.
so the first question that we always ask everyone on the podcast, who are Natalie Baran and Hannah Winskill? And what is Liquid Violet for those that don't know?
Well, I'll let Hannah start. She's worked here longer than I have, so crack into it.
I feel like I've been working there for a lifetime now. Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm the casting director at Liquid Violet. And it's kind of what it says in a nutshell. I find wonderful actors for all of our voiceover projects that we do. We work across video games, but we also work across animations and dubbing as well. So it's a variety of projects that I'm casting for, and most of the time we're doing voiceover casting. Have been able to dabble in person visual casting as well from time to time as well, which is lovely. And I've been doing that for, gosh, coming up to 7 years at Liquid Violet now, I think. Yeah, it's grown a lot in the time I've been there, which has been incredible to see. I think there was 4 or 5 of us when I joined, and now we're about 15 or 16 of us, and we've got our own studios in Covent Garden, which is lovely. So yeah, being able to see the company flourish has been really wonderful.
Fantastic. And did you work anywhere else in casting before that, or was this your first casting role?
This was my first casting role. So previously, before Liquid Violet, I was actually an assistant voiceover agent at Independent Talent Group, and I did that for about 3 years. That was my first job out of university, so very much thrown into the industry, which I feel very, very, very lucky to have had that opportunity. And then when I came to Liquid Violet, I started off as an associate producer. So I was kind of doing mostly producing work, and then dabbling in the casting. And then slowly, as sort of the company's grown, the volume of casting and producing grew. I was then started doing 50-50 producing and casting. And then it kind of, the volume got too much for one person to handle. So they said, would you like to pursue the casting department, or would you like to pursue producing? So I've always been fascinated by casting, so that was the route for me. And then we've had some wonderful producers come on board since then.
And talking of producers, who is Natalie Baran?
Unmute. I am originally from New Zealand. I've worked in production for TV, on soap operas and short films and things and miniseries. I've worked in theatre production, started off actually in radio, so audio's always been kind of part of my career path, and things that I've done with that on air, behind the scenes, producing. I'm an actor as well. Did training a while back. And working in voiceover is something that I've kind of always done. The producing thing, a little bit the same with Hannah. I crossed over a little bit with casting as well, in a previous role. So casting video games and things like that. Which I think the sort of skills came from theatre casting and working in that sort of realm with producing as well. And now I'm a producer at Liquid Violet, and I'm on the interactive team, which is games and anything to do with sort of motion capture, VR, facial capture. We tie that all in as well if the client wants it.
I think from an acting point of view, the term producer is one that actors just don't know what your job role is. You know? We obviously we know we work with directors all the time. We know what directors do. We work with casting directors all the time. We know what casting directors do. How would you define your role as a producer? What is the role of a producer, especially for a video games company like Liquid Violet?
It's a majority of admin and meetings and quotes and spreadsheets. So we from start to finish, if a client comes to us and says, hey, I need voice in my game and I want several different things to happen, whether it's just straight voiceover, or we're doing synced voiceover to animations and on-screen things. Then we'll put together a quote, we'll discuss their needs, their wants. Deadlines is always a big one. Some clients will be like, we need it next week. And other clients will have a couple of years before we even may get to start recording. But the pre-planning for that is a big chunk of what we do. And then if casting comes into it, we gather all the briefs, the bios, the information they want, pass it on to Hannah, and she'll go through her databases and do what she does. And once I guess Hannah can probably explain what happens with that part of the production process, how she does her bit, what she sends back to us, and then we start to go out to the agents, and either we're getting requests for availability if it's a straight database casting, we're getting requests for self-tapes if we need something very specific for the client, if they want to hear something that fits the brief and they've got some script for us. And then gathering all that back up, passing it back to Hannah. Hannah will scrutinize and work with the client to see who may get straight cast from that, or we go into live auditions and bring people in to the studio for callbacks and whatnot. But that's Hannah. That's very involved. So go ahead.
Well, for our listeners who have maybe not heard of Liquid Violet before, can you give us some titles that Liquid Violet have worked on before? Maybe something that you're working on at the moment. I know obviously you've had some of our clients involved before with things like Diablo, but can you let us know of some others?
Yeah, well, yes, like you said, Diablo 4, which came out last year, I think. I always lose track of timelines, but yes, last year, Diablo 4 came out, which was a very, very big project from our side with Blizzard, who were based in LA. That project was, gosh, a good few years, I think, of casting and recording, with many wonderful actors. We've also worked on games like Elden Ring, which is by From Software. We've worked on a number of their games: Deracine, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, pretty much all of them. So yeah, but Elden Ring was a particularly big title. A lot of people recognize one of the writers on it, who was George R.R. Martin, who wrote Game of Thrones. So it kind of gained a lot of traction through that, and we're very happy with how it was received as well. But we also work on a lot of animations. We had an animated series come out called Arcane, which we dabbled in bits of the recording and casting for a few of the characters. That's based on a video game called League of Legends, so it's quite nice that we have sort of cross platforms as well, which we're starting to see more and more. And yeah, many dubs that we've done with Netflix as well. Too many to name probably, but many titles, many.
Yeah, we've one of the games we had release, I guess probably in the last 6 months, was Lies of P, which is a bit of a dark twisted pull on Pinocchio. That's quite gorgeous. We have a copy in the boardroom, so if you're ever around, Jamie, come have a play. Sasha and Milo was a really cute animation that the animation team worked on. That came out beginning of the year. Very cute multi-episode piece of work. And then we also do trailers and things as well. So recently we had some instructional tutorial type trailers for Homeworld 3, Lords of the Fallen, way back when I voiced a trailer for Call of the Wild, the New Zealand map. So that was my first recording. Yeah, my first recording here. I think Hannah cast me, so that was great. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So for the average listener who's maybe listening, we don't get many listeners that aren't actors, because obviously we are an actors podcast, but for the average listener who maybe doesn't know the kind of process, what's the process of the producing a video game? Because so many of us see a video game coming out, we go, oh, that's great, and then we play it. But there is so much involved. As you said, Hannah, obviously the process takes years and years and years. You know, some of the bigger games, you know, the Grand Theft Autos of this world take decades sometimes to produce. What is the process? So from your side of it, obviously.
Yeah, so from our side of it, I guess the first thing is the client is reaches out to us to say, hey, we've got this game, we'd really love to work with you on it. Sometimes they want to work on sort of the entire audio production process with us. Sometimes they will just take particular elements, so they might say, oh, we just want to do the casting with you, or we just want to do the recording and the post-production with you. So so it really varies because we're a audio production facility, so we will offer everything, and then they can choose what they would want to do with us. So they would kind of brief us, let us know a bit about their world, the timelines that they have, which, as you've said, are hugely varied in terms of could be weeks, months, and years sometimes for some of the bigger projects. So we really, on those first calls, the producers will really try and get like the nuts and bolts of, okay, what is it that they're wanting from us, and how long do we have to do this? Where do the timelines fit into against other projects that we're working on? And then I guess from my perspective, the casting is one of sort of the first steps that are taken. So I will gather sort of the relevant information that I need from them. Very rarely do they give 100% of what I need. You kind of have a this is the top ideal level of what I need from them, and you kind of bring them get as much information as possible, as close to that as I can. And then I'll try and gauge from them, okay, how long do I have to work on this? What type of casting are they looking for? We kind of do three types of casting. We do database casting, which is just where we're compiling a list with links to send to them of actors. We've got self-tapes, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then we have director studio auditions as well. We're finding more and more that people, I think, are wanting a mixture of those things now, particularly since the pandemic, for a variety of reasons. So quite often we might start off with database casting. I might send them a list of X many actors, and then they'll reduce it down to a smaller number to get self-tapes from and to hear sort of specific material for the project. And then they might even from there say, okay, we want to call back our top three from that for a director studio audition, so they can see how they work in the booth. So that's kind of the initial steps, and then they will go away and they will review it. I might have sort of some calls with them to provide feedback from me or the director, or they might want to bounce some ideas back and forth. Maybe something's not working, maybe something is really working, but they want to try a different approach. We try and be like as collaborative as possible with them to achieve overall what they want, which is the perfect cast. And then, yeah, hopefully at the end of it, they come out with the cast that they want, and then it gets passed over to the producers.
And we start the wrangling. So we go to the agents, and it's a bit of a traffic light system. So our first step is to check that the actor actually wants to be part of it and can provide what's asked. And when we get to the actual cast stage, checking that they're available for the recording dates. If we know in advance sort of the block of time they might be available, we'll put that on the casting brief. So we'll say, well, this is aiming to record in June, or it's going to be several sessions in Q4, which is the fourth quarter of the year, or that sort of thing. And if that's all okay and the actor's like, great, I can do it, we put them on pencil. Confirmations tend to come about a day, hopefully 2 days before the actual session, but it's always down to the client. So if they don't quite have everything they need yet, it can be that we are dealing with pencils right up until about 5 o'clock. Sorry, agents.
Yep, well aware of the process.
Yeah, and I think actors are as well. So if you're on pencil, it's a pretty good sign that something's going to happen. With child actors as well, then of course we'll work with the agents for organizing the child licenses, and depending on which council area you live in, especially for parents who have kids who are starting to get interested in this as well. With that, we start that process as early as we can, because some councils are 5 working days, some are 10, some may need more documentation, that kind of thing, to get that organized. And then whether or not the parent or guardian is going to be a chaperone, or if we need to reach out and hire a professional chaperone, and working out things around school time. So fingers crossed we don't have to record during school, so we're not taking them out of class. But if we do, then we're contacting the schools as well and saying, dear head person, may we please have this child for the afternoon? So yeah, just a lot of little elements to tie all that together. And then we're also gathering scripts, we're gathering biography information that will be useful in session, and providing that so that everyone can hopefully have a quick squiz through and see what is going to happen on the day.
Which is the perfect segue into my next question. So I'm an actor. I've been booked to play a role in a video game at Liquid Violet. I turn up on the day. What access does the actor have to, if any, to their character? Because that's one thing that, a lot of actors complain about sometimes with self-tapes, is not having enough backstory to the character, or not being allowed to see a full script because of NDAs or things like that. Obviously, if I've not been involved in the performance capture or the motion capture side of that character, I may just end up in a voice booth. Am I ever given animations to see, or pictures of the character, or ideas in that way, or am I just in a blank booth and I have to come up with it myself?
In an ideal world, you would be given lots of things, but it can be that often, especially with visual assets like your animations and cinematics and things, that they might still be locked. They're not quite ready. They haven't been signed off or approved, or they're just too massive to move around in the internet world. And or they're tied down by superior high NDAs while they're still working on them. Sometimes we record the voiceover well before any of that's even done. So depending on the project, you may go in and record voice first, and then the animators and the writers take away the lines and the script, and have you in their head, in their minds, while they're drawing or designing this. If we've got some scenic bits and pieces, we may have some photos available. We should have at least a drawing of the character, and if we're so early in the process that we don't have that, then it could be visual images pulled from like-minded things. So if it's a fantasy game and they're like, it's in the style of Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or something like that, then hopefully generic elf looks like what you'd expect to see generic elf, that sort of thing. And then if we're recording in session, often we'll have stuff up on screen that either the client is playing live in studio or on Zoom.
And does that tend to happen a lot when you're, obviously in film terms, we're talking ADR, but if you're going back in to do updates, to the game, do you tend to have more to work with then?
I think so. I think by that stage, if you're into the pickup side of things, you're getting pretty close to the finished product. So there should be a bit more to be able to show you. Maybe there's been teaser trailers or things available and released online as well. It could be that by that point, an actor's asked to come in and do some marketing materials for trailers or release events. So you'll see a lot of game events will have these big online multi-hour events where they're showing what's coming up, or game releases or teasers for what's happening in 2025, which can be quite exciting.
Yeah, and of course, so many video games are basically films now. It's crazy the way they've become. Great though. Right. So this may be one more for Hannah. How, as that actor who is then being selected to play that character, let's say a couple of months before that, how do I break into it? How do I get into the video game industry as an actor?
Well,
I think
I wish I could
you've maybe
do
frozen.
it. I think there's.
Maybe just
Oh
starting
no,
froze there.
am I back?
Yep, you're back now. Yep.
I hope I haven't had a power cut because my light just went out and then it's come back on. So I'm hoping I'm hoping this is going to be all right. Fingers crossed. Just let me know if I freeze again.
No, no, you're still here. You're all good.
Okay, I'll start the question again. So yeah, it hugely varies. I wish I could say that there was one right certain way of doing it, but I think from the people that I've met over the years, I think I've realized that everyone's entered via a different path. Some people come into it from purely an acting background, so they will go to drama school, they will get the agent, and then the agent might have a voiceover department, and then they join it that way, and then they start getting little sprinklings of jobs, and it's gradually built up from there. Other people I've met have just been massive gamers, and they've been fascinated by voiceover work, and they've wanted to develop themselves as a voiceover artist specifically. And some people I know have come from a production background as well. So they might have started in production in animation, for example. And quite often in animation, when they've got like little tiny characters that they're just trying to get done, they'll be like, oh, can you just hop in the booth and record that one line for us? And they've kind of got like a little taste for it, and they've come into it from that side. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily one specific path. A big thing I would say to open yourself up to the opportunity is to make yourself accessible to us. For me, I'm constantly using places like Spotlight. I'm going onto agents' pages. I'm seeing what's going on in theatre at the moment. I'm watching TV and film. I go on social media as well. I feel like with places like Instagram and Twitter, you actually find out a lot about the person themselves as well, which is quite nice. Not in a creepy stalker way, but it's really key that you are available to us, because you never know where you're going to find the next person. I think it's my job to be open to finding people from anywhere and everywhere. But obviously getting an agent is a really great start because they're the people who know the industry. They're going to be the people with the contacts they'll be working so hard to get you into the room. So I'd say that's a good place to start if you're really wanting to go for it.
Yeah, and we represent a lot of actors, obviously, who work in all aspects, film and TV and voiceover as well. Do you find that it's easier if you have a specific voiceover agent to top up your acting agent, or do you find that it doesn't really matter?
I don't think so. We work with voiceover agents, and we work with acting agents. Like I said, if someone is accessible, and we've got a good relationship that we can build up with the agent, that's what we want. It's getting on our radar, because I think voiceover castings is different to how television or film is going to be. We're not setting up like big days worth of castings in drama studios and having loads of people coming in all day. There is a lot more happening online now with that mixture of like starting off with database casting, for example. If I don't have anything that I can send, whether it's on Spotlight or on an agent's page or wherever, or you might have your own website or wherever you decide to present yourself, if I don't have something that I'm able to send with those database castings, which are becoming more common, then that is immediately ruling you out of a step that I can't put you forward for. It's not to say you won't get self-tapes or studio auditions, but I'm finding that, but I don't know if you find the same, Natalie. I think that's kind of creeping in more and more. So it is definitely advisable to just have something online that can be sent to people.
I think so, and it almost doesn't quite matter what you have as well. If we're doing trailers, you kind of want more narration examples, and if you don't have one, grab a book and read out a passionate paragraph of something adventurous or something that is your natural voice, but also telling a story, because that covers quite a lot of characters and also gives, I find for myself and probably Hannah as well, a sense of who you are as a storyteller. Um, if you are looking at acting training, I always say great, training is great. It gets your mind working, it brings characters up. You might do something in class where you think, ah, if I need a witch, that's a really fun place to start to create a character from. Improv is fun, because quite often, as Hannah just mentioned, we might throw a character at you in the booth, which only has 1 or 2 lines, but it is a separate entity from your main character, and if you can quickly just go, here's an idea, see what happens. Then that also is a starting place. So a director can go, oh, I liked what you did with the tone, but let's slow it down, or let's put a bit of a growl into that. Let's make them sound 10 years older, 12 years younger, that kind of thing. So training is always good, topping up with workshops. But also don't go out there and spend loads and loads of money as well, because economy, life, pay your rent.
Yeah,
But if you find a teacher that you think that would be great to have, like a little workshop, or you know, a refresher class, especially if you've done a drama degree and it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, getting out and meeting people. And I find often I'll turn to someone and be like, I need someone Scottish, and I'll get names that either I've met in the past and unfortunately, age, forgotten, whatever. Or again, they haven't been visible. So we haven't seen them come across doing anything recently. And unfortunately, with games, it's probably they are working, but it's completely NDA'd and you can't talk about it for 2 years. So
Yeah, I love what you're saying about visibility there. One of my frustrations as an agent is seeing other agency websites where they don't advertise the clients they advertise, or they represent, sorry. It's crazy to me, you know, and it always says, you know, client list available on request. Why do you not want to advertise the clients that you represent? Because obviously from your point of view, you can then just go to that website and see who's there and look through those profiles. You want to make them as accessible as possible.
yeah, or if we're using Spotlight, make sure that it's up to date. You've got your latest credits, even if you can't talk about something. And I on my Spotlight, I've got um, video game, TBA, no information, no director, no company, but it's something that I know is going to release this year or next year. That as a casting person, I can scan through the list and go, they've got something coming up. That's great. They've been working on something in the realm. Um, could be useful.
And an important part of the Spotlight profile that so many actors forget is the About Me section, where
Mhm.
you can literally do that. You can literally say, I am currently working on an NDA video game. However, you know, you're letting the casting director know I am working. I just can't talk about it. And it's so important. So many actors just miss out that one section.
And if we're
Yeah,
looking for actors for mocap as well, like don't be afraid to list that you've done dance, you've done a circus workshop. Yeah, anything that is
more
physical,
detail.
more
Just
details is great.
just give us details. That I can't believe how many Spotlight profiles are still so blank. Um, just don't even not having any form of material to watch or listen to at all. And you know, it's great to be able to see people's credits, but when I'm working on fast turnaround castings, I can't hop onto, I don't know, Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon and find the exact scene or episode that you're in. You know, I need it to be there and then because I've got this casting that I have to send off by the end of the day. So yeah, just make yourself available.
And this is a point that we go on and on and on about at the academy, is how to format your Spotlight profile properly, because they don't teach you that at drama school. Spotlight, you know, they have guides and things, but they're not very intense because there are so many just little things on your Spotlight profile that can make you more noticeable. And I think you probably agree. The casting is changing. You know, I mean, there's over almost 90,000 people on Spotlight. If you put out a role on Spotlight that, you know, to attract actors to apply for it, you could be looking through thousands of submissions, you know, and that's not time conducive. So you need to have your profile formatted in the right way, because you guys are searching, you're doing searches, and with 90,000 actors to look through, you're going to be very, very specific to the skills that you need, so that when you get a short list coming up from that search, it's not going to be too big. You're going to be able to find what you're looking for. And that's why it's so important to fill out every part of your Spotlight profile. And like you say, so many people just forget.
I
And
think also a good tip for anyone who's kind of been out of the industry for a while, whether it's through family or work or other circumstances, use the about section to be like, you know, a quick sentence. I took a break because I've got a 2-year-old. We're like, cool, we understand, but also you're probably really good at reading children's short stories now and playing. So side skills are great to know about.
It's such an easy part to do.
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. And that also sort of switches round to when you are putting a submission in. We try and put as much information into the briefs as well that we have to hand that we're allowed to share. And that includes how to name your files. Because, I mean, I feel sorry for Hannah if we have a huge game that's got 50 characters and she's receiving hundreds of submission per character. Um, just the background admin on that and keeping everything in its right folder and file. You don't want to be not scooped up for the package
Yeah, it's
just
amazing how
because
many,
it's gone somewhere because it's not named right.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
amazing.
always say to look at it from the casting director's point of view. So look at what you're doing, right? I'm about to write to Liquid Violet to ask about being included in a video game. How is that going to be received, that email? You know, when is it going to be received? You know, is it going to be received at 3 in the morning? Is it going to be received on Friday night when the casting director's having a few gins? Is it going to be received first thing Monday morning when they're actually looking at their emails? Even just thinking about small things like that, you know, what are they going to be looking at in my profile? You know, what are they going to be looking for in my profile? And thinking of it from that way rather than going, I just need to fill this out because my agents told me to. Because Spotlight is a tool, it's not just a CV.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's so true. I mean, presentation and timing can be everything sometimes. And I get a lot of emails through from actors who are interested in being considered for projects that we're working on, and sometimes the timing of ones are impeccable, and sometimes if you send it at that, I don't know, 7 p.m. on a Friday, by the time I come in on a Monday, it's down the it's down the chain. So yeah, you're right, the timing can be so important sometimes, but
Schedule your emails. If you're writing it at 7 o'clock on a Friday, schedule it for 9 o'clock on Monday. So it's easy to do. Anyway, we could talk forever about the things that people are getting wrong. But we touched obviously on Spotlight being a great tool. What other tools do you think are good for actors? Obviously, there are things like voice reels. What kind of things should be in a voice reel?
yeah, voice reels are great. I wouldn't say that they're, yeah, I don't want to say, if you don't have a voice reel, I'm not going to consider you, because like I said, you never know where the next person is going to come from. You can find them from anywhere and everywhere. Um, Voice reels are a really, really great way for me to be able to just clearly go, oh, great, they've got a game voice reel, wonderful. Oh, an animation reel. Oh, I can listen to all the variety of voices they're doing. That's amazing. If you can't afford to put that sort of thing together, then honestly, a great starting place is just laying some stuff down on your phone, as long as the audio quality is good enough for us to be able to hear you, so you don't sound like you've got this crawling over your mouth. That's a great way for me to be able to listen to you as well. It varies depending on what kind of character I'm looking for. Like Natalie said, like a trailer voice, I'm going to be listening to something entirely different, like a narration. I'm going to want to hear something in more of like a narrative style. I've quite often listened to like people doing their little documentary clips as well when we're doing stuff like that. But I'd say first and foremost, the first thing to have on would actually be what your natural voice is. I'm finding more and more a lot of the briefs are what people's natural voices are. People are wanting authenticity. People are wanting to embrace who that person really is. If I'm doing a Scottish, I don't know, wizard, I'm going to be finding Scottish people first and foremost, because we're in the UK. We have many wonderful Scottish people. So show that's who, if that's who you are first and foremost, then show that as the very first thing, and then you can start to expand on there with other voices or accents that you're good at, and that you can sustain for a 4-hour session. That
Again,
is,
which is, yeah, so important. You have to be able to keep it up because the sessions are long.
yeah,
If
a
you
lot.
say you can do an American accent, it needs to be 100%. You need to know what region you're Americanizing from, and yeah, keep it up for that whole session. And then if we call you back in for another session or pickups, be able to, we'll play you back what you did to be able to match that again.
Up
And
straight away.
yeah,
It's so important, particularly with you know, with video games, you're getting a lot of very vocally stressful characters sometimes, and you have monster voices, really low voices, and it can be quite taxing on your voice if you can't do that. If you can do it for a few sentences and then your voice is going to be gone, don't put it on. Train your voice up to be vocally stronger. Take care of your voice. If you think that's something you can build up to manage to sustain for a 4-hour session or beyond 4 hours, because you might come back in for another 4 hours the next day and do some more, then do it. But don't put stuff on there that you're not 100% confident that you can, you know, deliver consistently.
yeah.
And also,
With the producer hat on, we wouldn't, if it's full on monster orc type things, we would avoid, if possible, doing a 4-hour session for that. But
I'm
but we
over
don't,
exaggerating,
yeah,
but you know.
but we don't want to like absolutely wreck you in a 2-hour monster session, or lots of barks and exertions, which is all the non-scripted noise, like you're falling off cliffs and you're dying and all that kind of stuff, and you're dying violently and you're dying in a long session, or um and then your next session is the next morning, or you're going on to another job. We don't want to wreck you in the morning and you can't do a commercial somewhere else, or um read an audiobook if we've screwed that up for you.
so the basics that you are learning at drama school, the voice techniques and the warm-up techniques and the ways of looking after your voice are just as important, even
Oh
though
yeah,
you have a microphone, you know? Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
Warm up and then warm down.
Yeah, and I was going
Absolutely.
to add to the casting part, not to put so much emphasis on learning new accents and things like that, because as we just talked about, the industry is so overpopulated that if you need to find someone with a specific accent, you'll find them. You know, it's no,
Yeah, exactly. With the kind of briefs that are coming to us, they are definitely getting more international, which is a wonderful. And I love that. But a lot of, say for example, our clients in LA, if they're coming to us, they're looking for UK talent. So the odds are you're going to find the native, you're going to find your native northerners, and you're going to find the people from the West Country, and if that's what they're wanting. There could be exceptions to that, like if Natty was saying, if someone came in to record a role and then there was like 2 tiny little characters that they said, oh, I don't suppose you can do this accent by any chance, and they might cover that with the person. So that's not to say that those accents won't be used, but I'd really lean into, first and foremost, embracing who you are authentically, and then branching out from there as well. International castings that we've been doing also, embracing your heritage. You know, we're very lucky that we live in a country that is so wonderfully multicultural, and there are lots of people who could, I don't know, they could have been born and raised here, but their parents are from, I don't know, Egypt or something, so they can very seamlessly, you know, speak in an Arabic accent or an Egyptian accent, or speak the language even. And I think that's very important to embrace as well. If that's who you are as a person, show that to us, because we're getting more briefs that come up like that as well, which is really lovely.
I'd have to agree with that. The whole code switching. If there's a certain way that you speak with your family, or the region that your heritage is from, might be slightly different, but it could be something that's quite delicious for a character.
Yeah.
I There's a really neat actress who's part Filipino, part New Zealand, and she did a few things on Instagram, kind of the character voice that she uses on TV, the character that she would use on theater, and then like a conversation with her parents was just something slightly different. It was really fun, and it could be, that kooky character that pops up one day. So keep all of that in the back of your mind,
Mm.
and be prepared to pull it out. I remember long ago I was auditioning for an anime dub. It was American accent. I lived in the States and Canada for a long time, and my American is solid. And I rehearsed it, practiced it, was really excited for it. And then I got to the audition and they had, oh, we've got this third character. Do it in your New Zealand accent. And it was not good because I had been using the American accent for so long that the Kiwi was just like, oh my gosh, how do I be me? So be you. Being you is natural and authentic, and do it.
Well, we can't do a podcast episode about video games without touching on the monster in the room, or the elephant in the room. That is AI. How is AI changing the video game industry, or how have you noticed it? I mean, I think one thing that a lot of people that are worried about AI don't realize is that AI already is used quite a lot. How does it get used in video games, and what are the sort of things to look out for?
I mean, I guess it's different from your perspective, Natalie, to how it probably is in my perspective. Because for me, I'm all about the actors, and how it will impact replacing the voice actors themselves rather than maybe behind the scenes in the production line. It's hard. There are a lot of conversations going on at the moment in the industry about AI, and we hear tinkerings of it, and we're very much aware of the conversations that are going on. And I think it's just at the moment we don't quite know what direction it's going to go in. So all we want to make sure is that we're listening and that we're part of the conversations whenever they do start to happen. Obviously, for me, I really do not want voice actors to get replaced by AI voice actors. To me, the most authentic and beautiful performance is one that comes from someone's soul. So a computer is never going to replace that, in my opinion. So that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, I would have to agree. As things stand, the legal and industry positions with respect to AI, of course, are rapidly changing. The technology is just going through the roof with what it can do and what people are experimenting with what it can do. At Liquid Violet, we are currently not exploring uses of any voice recordings that we capture for AI-related purposes. So, from our own behalf, we can provide that commitment to our clients and to the actors as well. However, we are an outsourcer. We're in the middle, so when agents and actors ask, like, we can't provide a commitment on behalf of the client. So I'm sure in the background, agents are sort of a lot of back and forth with contracts and things at the moment. And like Hannah said, it is a big discussion. We know that SAG and the other sort of unionized places around the world are still at the table on this and still working on the how and the why and the policies and what can be controlled and influenced. Yeah, so still a huge talking point, still a very legal and industry roundtable discussion, and we're keeping an eye on it as it develops.
Yeah, that's my big thing, is just keeping an eye on what's happening. I think my biggest worry from the conversations that I've heard people have, or things that people have discussed when might have been in the room somewhere or heard at an event or something, is I worry sometimes that people are thinking about what AI is now and not what AI is going to be in 10 years, 20 years. People think, oh, it doesn't, it's not, you watch it, but you can still tell that it's AI, this is never going to replace us. And I sit there and I think, well, that's AI in 2024. Think where it was in 5 years ago. And we thought, it's rubbish in comparison to what we could do. And it's slowly getting better because AI learns. So for me, I just hope that the conversations happen quickly enough and things are laid down quickly enough to put a stop to it. But I think it takes everyone to say no, and everyone is a lot of people. So there's also a reality that we've just got to sort of be aware of what's going on see.
Yeah.
We
I
can.
think as an actor as well, if you're developing your brand and your style, um, perhaps avoid jumping on the generative AI bandwagon and doing the little TikTok and Instagram and Facebook challenges where you're giving away your image, your face, your voice, um, because you put it out there and you don't know who's just going to scoop it up
Mm.
and twist it round and throw it back out in some form that you don't want it to be.
Yeah, and in our discussion we had with Marta Svetek a couple of weeks ago, she
Mm,
made a great point, is that it's your career and you need to be in charge. And although your agent is reading these contracts for you, and although the production company are working through the contracts, you need to be aware of what you're signing up to, and keep an eye on that as well. Yeah. Yeah, scary, scary time, but
mm.
like you say, everyone is a lot, and if everyone stands up against it, then hopefully we can make a change. Anyway, on to the final question of the podcast, which we ask everybody that comes on. If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a big
It's a
question.
biggie. Yeah, it's a biggie.
Oh my goodness. Um,
This is why we leave it till last.
uh, I can go first, I guess.
Good.
Um, um, I mean, I guess for me, from my perspective, from casting, I would love to see people being a bit more accessible on places like Spotlight still. Um, so that's probably just the main thing for me from my personal perspective. I think there's still a lot of people are slowly clocking onto it, I think, and how it's important to, show who you are and be able to be accessible to us. But there are still a lot of people who don't have any voice clips and show reels on Spotlight. There are people who list every accent as their native accent under the sun on Spotlight, and the reality is that we usually have one native accent, and then other accents we can do really well. So yeah, I think the biggest change I'd like to be would just, I guess, things being a bit more easily accessible and presentable from my standpoint for database casting. So yeah, that's probably my biggest thing.
I would have to agree from looking to see who's out there, and it could be a small credit, or it could be, fill in the information of the director that you recorded at or the studio. Um, because we know people who work in those places as well, and who are producing things for TV and film, and if you've got time on your hands, I've done some super fun things, not gotten paid, but it's been worthwhile for me. So the short films, the 48-hour film festival type platforms where you can get together with a bunch of mates and make something, and then from the finished product extract 30 seconds or a minute of something that shows you off, um, naturally or in a completely different way. And I think also going back to Spotlight, they have introduced a lot from the back end casting side of things. There's a lot more boxes we can tick to filter and really narrow it down. And you might be looking for someone who um, is a Londoner, natural London accent, but speaks French. So if you do speak French to a very high standard, like you can sight read it and act in it, that is an option now that will pop up. So I cast a game last year where I needed French, German, and an Australian in terms of their accents, but they also needed to be able to do that vocal combat because it was very military based, and being able to really narrow down the filtering made it a little bit easier to shortlist and find people who you go, oh, well, their mother's Australian, didn't know that. Great. So they can probably code switch the accent and find something that's quite natural to where they grew up.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Excellent. Great answers. Great answers. So lastly, how can actors get in touch with you if actors want to work with Liquid Violet? Do you have like an email address that people can send stuff in?
We do. If you jump on our website, liquidviolet.co.uk, and go to the contact us page, there is a hello at and a form that actors can fill in. So fill in the form.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's been absolutely brilliant. Natalie, Hannah, thanks so much for joining us on the Actors Toolkit. Enjoy your bank holiday weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a great one.